Before you say anything, the room already knows if your word will hold. And if they are seeing you move before, they are not listening to what you say. They are waiting for what you will change. That's why you can say something clearly and still it doesn't land the way it should. There's no pushback, there's no argument, but something about it already feels off. Most people think authority break when they speak, when they hesitate, when they explain too much, when their answer starts to soften. That sounds right, because those are the parts you can hear, but that's not where it starts. In most situations, the decision has already been made before you even open your mouth, before the prize, before the answer, before the conversation even got going. And once that decision is made, everything you said gets filtered through it, which means you're not fixing it when you speak. You're reacting to something that was already decided. That is not a speaking problem. And it's not something you fix by saying it better. I've been around people running serious operations to know that this pattern doesn't care about intelligence or being smart. Brand owners, music executives, founders funding their own business, sharp people who can describe exactly what is happening in this moment, who feel it while it's still happening, who walk out of the conversation knowing something went wrong, and then walk into the next one and feel it happened again. That is not a preparation problem, and it's not even a communication problem. It is something that runs underneath both of these, and this starts before you say a single word. Here's the thing most people never get to understand. You don't lose authority when you speak. You lose it in what you bring into the room before you speak. What the room sees when you walk in. How settled you are. How much you're reading them versus holding yourself. That right there gets decided in the first few seconds. And once it's decided, everything you say afterward is heard through that lens. That is where this starts. Not in words, but before them. Most business owners, when something feels wrong in a conversation, focuses on what was said, the wording, the framing, the tonality. They think, if I would have said it differently, maybe it would have landed a lot differently. And sometimes it's true, but there is a specific kind of condition or conversation you can say it perfectly, but still it doesn't land clearly. There's no pushback, there's no disagreement, but something in how they respond feels slightly off. Like they heard you but didn't quite receive it well. You felt that the words came out exactly right, and something about the interaction still felt a bit off. That right there is not a wording problem. That's what I call a pre-verbal problem. And it was already set before the conversation even started. Now, here's something nobody teaches you. The room doesn't wait for you to speak to form a read on you. They start reading the moment you enter the space, or pick up the call, or join the meeting. And what they're reading in those few seconds is just one specific question. Does this person hold what they say, or does he move if I wait? That's the question the room is answering before you have said anything. And by the time you speak, they have already formed a working answer. Before you say a word, people around you are picking up information. And they are not doing this through analysis, but through something faster than analysis. They are feeling whether you're settled or searching. Settled means you arrived at something. You know where you stand. There is nothing in your energy looking for confirmation that you're in the right place. Searching means something in you is still orienting outward, still checking, still reading them to know how this is going to go. The difference is felt before it's seen. Think about a moment before a hard conversation. And I don't mean at work, somewhere more personal. Let's say you needed to say something to someone who mattered to you. Something that would require you to hold it, even if they reacted badly. When you were alone with it, before they were in front of you, you were very clear. You knew what needed to be said. The words were right there. Then they walked in and something shifted. And what shifted was not what we are going to say, but how much of yourself you're willing to commit to saying it. Their presence created a pull towards the softer version. And this happened not because they did anything special, but because they were just there. And being there made the consequences of the clear version feel more real. That shift, the one that happens before you speak, is what the rule reads. They don't know you had a clearer version. They just feel that what's arriving has something in it that is still forming. And once they feel that, they respond straight to it. They don't respond to what you say, but what was felt underneath it. Once the room has formed a read on you, even before you speak, it changes how they receive everything that comes after it. And this is the part most people miss entirely. They think that the conversation is separate from the impression they made walking in. It's not. The read doesn't reset when you start talking. It filters everything through itself. If they read you as settled, as someone who has arrived at something and don't need their reaction to confirm it, then what you say lands with the weight of someone who means it. They deal with what you said, not what it might become, not the softer version that might arrive after more pressure. What you actually said. If they read you as searching, as someone whose position is still forming and needs something from them to feel complete, then what you say lands as an opening, not a conclusion. And they respond to openings differently from the way they respond to conclusions. With a conclusion, you either accept it or not. With an opening, you step into it, you contribute to it, you wait to see where it goes. The moment the room treats your statement as an opening, the conversation changes shape. And now, you're in a different conversation from the one you intended. Most people try to fix this by working on what they say. Better preparation, better delivery, maybe even more practiced answers. That helps with some things, but misses the actual problem. Because the issue isn't in what you say. The issue is in what you're carrying when you say it. There's a specific pattern that runs in people who folds in this moment. Before the conversation, they are very clear. They know what they want to say. The version they intend to deliver is right there. Then the other person arrives, and something in them switches from holding what they know to tracking what the other person is feeling. It's a split. One part stays with what they know. The other part orients outward, towards the room, towards the reaction, towards what this might turn into. And the second part starts shaping the delivery before it even leaves your mouth. The room doesn't see this internal split, but they feel the result of it. They feel someone arriving who is more interested in how what they say land instead of in actually what they are saying. And once they feel that, they know without being told that the delivery is still adjustable, which means they don't have to do anything. They just have to wait. This is the thing that has been running underneath every conversation that felt off. The issue wasn't bad preparation, not choice of words or lack of confidence. Just a pattern of arriving with part of yourself oriented to their reaction, even before they have had one. And that orientation changes what the room receives, even before you say it. This pattern didn't start in your business. It started somewhere quieter. The conversation that didn't have numbers attached to them. Think about the last time you needed to hold something with someone very close to you. A standard you said you were going to keep. A boundary you described clearly. A commitment you made to how you were going to show up. When you were alone with it, it was clear. You knew what it required. Then the moment arrived where it was going to cost something in the relationship for you to hold. And the costs didn't have to be dramatic. Just a shift in the energy. A look. A slight change in how the room felt. And you adjusted. Not dramatically, but slightly. Maybe you softened the delivery. Maybe you left more room than you intended. Maybe you said something that gave it somewhere to go. And in that moment, the person in front of you learned something about you. Not because you told them anything, but because they were paying attention. They learned what's happened when holding something becomes uncomfortable. And they have been responding to that knowledge quietly without mentioning it in every conversation since. The room you walk into on a pricing call already carries what previous conversations taught them. The team that receives your feedback already knows how it tends to arrive when something genuinely is at stake. The client who sits across you in a negotiation has already formed a hypothesis about how this is going to go. And they don't do this from research, but from pattern recognition. And the pattern that they are recognizing started somewhere personal, long before any of this became a business conversation. One conversation where the room reads you as unsettled doesn't change much. That's what makes it very easy to dismiss. But the pattern compounds across enough interaction that it starts to change the dynamics permanently. Think about what happens when a team have seen their leaders soften enough times. They stop bringing the hard problem directly. And that is not because they stopped caring, because they have learned that hard problems, when delivered directly, gets soft response than needed. So they either handle it themselves or they bring it in a way that already has the softening built in it. And the leaders stop getting accurate information of what is happening. Think about what happens when a client has been seeing a pricing conversation go the same way every time. They stop negotiating. And they do this not because they are being easy on you, but because they have learned that the conversation does the negotiating for them. They just have to be patient. And the business owner ends up in a market where their prices is a suggestion, not a position. Think about what happens when the people closest to you have seen the same pattern in your personal conversations. They stop bringing the real thing directly. They bring the version that gets through, the approach that produces the response they need. And the relationship starts operating on the managed version of both of you instead of the actual one. None of this is loud and none of it announces itself. It just slowly and quietly becomes the operating reality. Until you're in a business where your price doesn't hold, your decision requires constant reinforcement, and your word needs support to land. And that's not because anything dramatic happened, but because the room read you accurately enough times that it became what they expect. Now, take the same situation with one thing differently. You walk in or you join a call without a part of you orienting towards their response in the way. You're not being cold, you're not being rigid. You're just settled. Like someone who has already arrived on something and doesn't need a response for confirmation. Something changes immediately, even before you say anything. The room doesn't know why, but they feel it. They feel like whatever is coming has already been decided. Not because you told them to believe or you said so, but because how you're holding yourself said so. And when you speak from that place, the word lands differently. Not because he said them more confidently, but because they arrived into a different kind of space. A space where the room understands, without being told, that this is the version, not the opening version, the main actual version. They stop watching for what it might become. And once that becomes consistent, and once the room experiences you as someone who arrives with something already held, the entire dynamic changes. They stop looking for the moment when things will shift. They stop waiting for the adjusted version to appear because they have stopped expecting it. And your words start carrying something different. Not louder, not more forceful, just heavier in the right way. Here's the honest thing about everything you just heard. Understanding it doesn't change what happens in the room. You might recognize it completely. You might have felt it happen the whole time you've been listening. And the next time you walk into a high-stake conversation, you will still feel the pull to orient towards their reaction before you speak. Because that pull is not in your thinking, it's in your body. It's a learned pattern built around years of programming where checking the room before speaking actually worked, where it reduced friction, where it kept things smooth. And the body doesn't let go of what works just because you now understand what is costing you. That's the gap most people get stuck in. They understand the pattern, they can describe it in detail. They watch it running while it runs, and they can't do anything about it. And that's because insight doesn't interrupt a physical pattern. It just makes you more articulate about watching it repeat. In the specific moment when you feel the orientation shift, when part of you moves from bolding what you know to reading how they feel, and choosing differently right there, catching it before it shapes what the room receives. That's where this actually changes. Not in understanding it here, but in the next conversation where it tries to run again. That's exactly where this work happens. Not in helping you understand the pattern, you have already seen this clearly enough. Not in giving you script of how to sound more settled. The room reads past scripts faster than most people even realize. But in walking inside the actual moment, the moment where you walk into a room that matters, the moment before a call where something is at stake, the moment where you feel the orientation starts to shape, walking right there, catching the pattern as it starts, building something different in that specific instance, not through techniques, but through repetition in real conditions. Until arriving settled doesn't feel like something you have to try to do, and it starts being what happens when you walk in. If you have recognized this in yourself, and you know that recognizing it isn't enough to stop it, the first link in the description is the place to start. This is the next step for someone who is done watching and want to change what happens in the room that matters. There's a conversation coming for you, not eventually, but soon. A room you're going to walk into, or a call you're going to join, where something is at stake, and people on the other side are going to form a read on you before you speak. And in the few seconds before you open your mouth, you're going to feel it. That pull towards their reaction, the orientation outward, a part of you still checking whether the version you brought in is the right one. Nothing forces you to stop it. You can let it run and the conversation will happen again. And most of it will go fine. But the room must have felt what it felt, and they will respond accordingly. The next time you walk into something that matters, you will know what's happening in those first few seconds. You will feel the moment the orientation starts to shift, and you will have a choice about what to do with it. The choice is where this either changes or doesn't. The link below is for someone who wants support in making that choice different. In real situations, under real conditions, with something actually at stake. And if you're not ready for that yet, subscribe, because this is what we do here. One moment at a time. Seeing clearly enough to finally catch it before it shorts. See you in the next year.